Hey everyone, I just wanted to say thank you to those who signed up for the webinar last week. It was a really impromptu, last minute kind of thing that I did, but I actually plan on doing them once a month from now on. And so this month, we're going to be talking about how to stop fearing your body when you live in a body with chronic pain, chronic illness. It's not about being overly positive and willing it all away. It's actual real strategies that I use in my everyday life and that I teach clients as well. The webinar last week was about facing your holiday fears while living with a chronic illness. And so we just kind of identified the most common fears and challenges that people have when going through the holidays. We really talked a lot about things like feeling socially isolated and fear of missing out, fear of judgment, triggering symptoms, emotional dysregulation, things like that. And then kind of some ways to help you know how to say no better and how to say yes better, which is really hard for a lot of us. I have a lot of fun hosting live workshops because I really enjoy interacting with people. It's one of the reasons why this is an interview-based podcast. So my hope is that more of you will be able to join as time goes on, and that will form really a kind of tight-knit, small, but awesome community together and getting to know each other by showing up to these monthly workshops. And I apologize if I sound super tired. I'm actually just really sick right now and really want to get this podcast out. So I am recording the introduction with my voice as is. But the next webinar will be next Friday on the 17th, 3 o'clock. And the link to sign up will be in the show notes below. That's 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and there will also be a workbook that goes along with it. So if you want to get the workbook for free, just sign up anytime before 3 o'clock on Friday, November 17th, Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't make it live, then there will be a replay. But if you can make it live, please do. I would love to see you and hear from you. So that's it for now. Let's get into the episode. The Chronic Illness Therapist podcast is meant to be a place where people with chronic illnesses can come to feel heard, seen, and safe while listening to mental health therapists and other medical professionals talk about the realities of treating difficult conditions. This might be a new concept for you, one in which you never have to worry about someone inferring that it's all in your head. We dive deep into the human side of treating complex medical conditions and help you find professionals that leave you feeling hopeful for the future. I hope you love what you learn here, and please consider leaving a review or sharing this podcast with someone you love. This podcast is meant for educational purposes only. For specific questions related to your unique circumstances, please contact a licensed medical professional in your state of residence. Christina Kantzavelos is a psychotherapist, coach, writer, advocate, and artist. She received her bachelor's and master's of social welfare from the University of California, Los Angeles, and her second master's in library and information sciences from San Jose, California State University. She's visited over 30 different countries and documented most of them on social media. However, it was in completing Camino de Santiago, a 500-mile pilgrimage across Spain at the end of 2015, that she realized her strong affinity with writing. She decided to start Buen Camino, an award-winning gluten-free and health-conscious lifestyle travel publication. In her therapy practice, Begin Within Today, she treats those with chronic illnesses and disabilities, including Lyme disease and CPTSD. She's licensed in California, Oregon, and Washington, and coaches clients throughout the U.S. and internationally. She's also published the Begin Within Daily Health Wellness Journals for chronic illness and mental wellness, that she's now turning into an app called Within Me. Yes. Okay. So we've been talking off air about something that is incredibly hard for me to talk about, and I'll just start with that. And the reason why I try to talk about is because when we start to go into things like chronic illness and cures and healing and things that work, it can start to feel like if something works for me and you're listening to this and it didn't work for you, then it feels like you're not trying hard enough. I know I've been on that end of the spectrum a million times. I'm not eating right enough, or
damn, I did this thing. Like I ate gluten this week. And so therefore now my entire month is like messed up. And so what Christina and I have been talking about is this theory around the like a histamine bucket. We're talking about MCAS, and we're you and I, would you agree, Christina? Like we're both just very much in the learning phase. So this isn't like a master class and like the most up to date evidence based research on MCAS, but this is what we're learning from our own experiences as well as what our clients are bringing to us and what doctors are saying. But again, like there's a lot we just don't know about MCAS. So just gonna preface that. Do you want to say anything, Christina?
No, I think it's quite complicated because even doctors are learning and researchers are learning more and more about MCAS every single day. It doesn't completely I don't feel like it completely makes sense to anyone at this point. So we're all in some ways learning from this as we're experiencing it. And it's hard. It's challenging. And what we were saying earlier is we were talking about the histamine bucket, which the idea is when our histamine buckets begin to overflow, that's when we become symptomatic. And MCAS has, I don't know how many symptoms to it. We're just talking about all the bizarre symptoms. I mean, even UTIs, rashes, welts, migraines. Oh, the list is sort of endless as I'm finding out, as I'm learning more about this. Anyway, so just becoming symptomatic when that bucket fills up and how everyone's bucket is different. One thing that may affect you may not affect me at all, like may not fill my bucket up at all. Versus what helps me feel better, alleviates my symptoms. That may work for me and that may not work for you. And there's a lot of this is what we were talking about earlier, this idea of not enoughness. I'm not doing this right or enough of this. And then also on the other side of this, you brought this up. Destiny is like, well, um, maybe, if something works, maybe you didn't have that symptom to begin with. Maybe you didn't have that diagnosis to begin with. And that's so unfair, and
Ah, That's what, yeah, that's what I think was like that's, I think I get most self-conscious about that because I've seen that like in the Facebook groups. It's like, oh, if you cured this thing or if you are doing so much better now, then you never had the disease to begin with. Like your diagnosis was wrong. It wasn't real. And mine is real because I'm still suffering with it. And again, this is just, it's tricky. It's really tricky. But I kind of feel like that's like saying to someone with breast cancer who's in remission that they never had breast cancer because they what like it just doesn't make sense. We would never say that to somebody with cancer. Um and so the body is complex. Like we barely can scratch the surface of what we know about the body and the brain. So and even when you read about MCAS online, it's like, okay, what's the causes? Okay, there's primary MCAS, there's secondary MCAS, there's idiopathic MCAS. So there you go. There's already three different types. And then within that, there's symptoms may include skin, itching, flushing, hives, sweating, swelling, rash, eyes, irritation, itching, watering, nose, itching, running, mouth and throat, itching, swelling in your tongue or lips, swelling in your throat, lungs, trouble breathing, wheezing. Like these symptoms go with so many different things. They also can just literally like it's what we think of with allergies, like itchy skin, eyes, nose, like trouble breathing, asthma. So it's just really easy, I think, for people to kind of put their own perception of what they know and don't know and come up and make an assumption about what's happening in someone else's body based on their own thoughts, their own experiences, their own whatever. Um, and so I think my main point here is, and this is actually really important because a lot of times when we're working with families who don't have a chronic illness, it's like it's not they're exaggerating or they're making this up because, "Look, research says this," or, "My experience has been this," or, whatever. Family members will really dismiss somebody's diagnosis because they don't believe that it's really if they see their partner, doing anything fun that requires physical energy, then it's like, "Oh, see? You have the why can't you clean this entire house top to bottom? You were able to go bowling with your friends last
Yep,
night."
yep.
Um and it's so frustrating, I think, that when people put such like they know so much about what something can or cannot be when doctors aren't even able to properly diagnose more than half the time. So, this is just a mini because this is a mini masterclass in, it doesn't matter if you believe that your partner has a certain illness or not, their symptoms are still real. Okay, so it doesn't matter if I have a diagnosis of MCAS or not. If I have welts from head to toe that no one can explain, blood work can't explain, like you can see these welts. Even when you can't see pain, we still have to believe it. But it's just interesting to me, even when you can see it, like doctors can still kind of look at you and be like, well, we don't know. And it's like, can you like you can see, like I have welts out my whole body, like red, painful, itching welts. And your answer is like, I don't know, like take 6 Allegra a day. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Oh, no, it's just I think it's like the gaslighting is so real, and what I want to say is just because you haven't experienced something, just because you haven't read about something doesn't mean it's not real for another person. We have to open up our minds and our hearts to believing something is true for someone else. Otherwise, we are further traumatizing them. That's what's actually happening.
Yeah.
I believe healing happens when people believe you. Like
Yeah.
that kind of the start of it. Because
And
ultimately you start to gaslight yourself. Well, maybe this isn't real. Maybe I am exaggerating. Maybe this is maybe I am quote unquote crazy. Maybe, that's I've had
yeah.
doctors tell clients that so many times.
Oh yeah. I have clients, it's so interesting. I have clients coming to me now who are like, so this thing is in my head and I need you to help me with it. So like before it was like, I have like everyone's telling me like we have a lot of anger about people telling us that it's in our head, but I literally have people coming to me now being like, nope, like I believe it, it's in my head. So like help me psychologically. And it's just such a weird phenomenon that's happening right now because I'm like, wait, like I'm here to help you and we can work through this fear and the pain cycle and all of those things, but like you need a doctor. Like this is physical too.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and it's just so interesting. Like, I'm reading here too, on Healthline, it's like, in severe cases of MCAS, you might experience anaphylactic shock. This condition requires emergency treatment. Symptoms include a rapid drop in blood pressure, lightheadedness, weak pulse, trouble breathing, confusion, loss of consciousness. I mean, I've experienced all of those except for loss of consciousness. I never went to the hospital. I'm like, you if without proper treatment, you don't know if what you're living with could be really, really potentially dangerous.
1,000%. I have an EpiPen on me at all times because I have experienced all of those things. But had I not, you know, gone to a doctor who believes me and was able to say, "Hey, this is likely MCAS," even before we were talking about this formally diagnosed, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known that necessary steps to take. I wouldn't have carried an EpiPen with me, and so forth. Yeah, this is really, really, really important. And back to what you were saying. So for me as a therapist to see me, I have two requirements now. Like seriously, two requirements. And one is that you do see a root cause doctor, one who understands these diagnoses such as MCAS, because I'm not a doctor. And I can only, what you were saying, like I can only help you so far, but some of this is biological, despite what your family, friends are so far they're, are telling you, it's in your head. It's like, okay, well, until we rule out that it's not, let's make sure that you're seeing a doctor. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
getting proper treatment. You deserve that. You deserve to rule these things out and know where you are like standing. Cause we're biopsychosocial spiritual beings. And you and I, right, we can help with the psycho, the social, maybe even the spiritual aspect, but that bio part, I really need you to see a proper doctor who will treat you right
Yeah.
and with respect, who will meet you where you
Yeah.
are, who will not gaslight you. You deserve that. Every single person listening to this deserves to have a doctor who gets it, who believes in them, who believes
Abs-
them.
And what's your second requirement?
Oh, a neural retraining program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is where you and I differ a little bit on this one, but that's okay. Cause I know people who really benefited from neural retraining. I felt so gaslit by that training. So maybe you can just talk about like your experience with that. And I've even talked to, I have a good like Instagram buddy who's going through it, and she's been kind of updating me on like the highs and the lows and all of that. But so tell us a little bit about what neural reprocessing is, how
Sure.
it's helped baby, and kind of like, yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
So what I have found is anyone I know with chronic illness is been in a chronic stress response for a long time, either since childhood, since their teen years, chronic fight or flight, basically what it is. And we think of fight or flight, obviously, I'm not seeing people who are generally wanting to fight or sort of fling. What I see most is actually the other two F's, which is a fawning response, people pleasing, overachieving, and then a freeze response, just being so frozen. What is a freeze response, right? When we can't physically flee a situation, we freeze. And those are the two I see most often in my practice. So getting stuck in that response, this is what I always say, right? If our body thinks there's a tiger in the room or a tiger chasing us, is it going to prioritize survival, or is it going to prioritize healing? Obviously, the answer is survival. So healing has to go on the back burner until you feel safe. And when we've been on this, what I say, like this constant hamster wheel of fight or flight, we have to basically reprogram our brains to think and believe, hey, there truly was a tiger in the room. And for all intents and purposes, we're humans. There might be one in the future, but we don't need to stay in that response. We don't need to stay in that response. So what neural retraining does, there's various programs out there. And I agree. There was, I'm not disagreeing with you. There was some gaslighting feelings within this too, but it is a practice. What I like about this practice is it basically creates new neural pathways for you to believe that you are now in a safe situation, and your body can truly prioritize rest and repair, rest and digest. Um, so each neural retraining program is different, but the same premise of using heavy on visualizations. Mostly, I would say I don't know, probably 90% is visualizations, and then the other part is probably a lot of gratitude is what I would say. Meditation, gratitude, mindfulness. But what's interesting about the brain is it doesn't understand nuances. So something that has happened or hasn't happened, it doesn't know. Like everything is in present tense. So if you are telling your body, like in the future, I am feeling this, I am feeling good, I'm feeling energetic, whatever I'm feeling vibrant. I can go wherever I want, whenever I want. Um, your brain starts to take that in. So think of Olympians when they're training for any sport. They're going through, let's just say they're running on the track. They're picturing when they're not actually practicing, they're visualizing every single step. And they've actually done research, right? When they've looked at brains and visualizing, and they'll see like certain muscles contract. So it's really interesting. It's sort of, and plus visualizing also releases beautiful neurochemicals, which are very healing to the physical body. So it's not woo woo. There's actual biological reason why we visualize.
Yeah, no, I love visualization. Although I will say it definitely took me a long time to get there. I think it really is unfair, my criticism of DNRS, because I just one, the way that it was introduced to me was I was working with a somatic therapist. We had 7 sessions and she fired me. And she was like, maybe you can try DNRS. I've had clients who liked it. So then I buy this like $250 program, and I like am going through it. And like the first thing she's telling me is like to just say, no, stop to your pain. And I'm like, what the
Yeah.
like, it was just so jarring. So again, like totally unfair, probably my experience with it is what's led me to be like, what? No. But I do a lot of this stuff with my clients. We do work on visualization, but we do it within relationship to one another, which, from a somatic experiencing perspective, we heal in community. And a lot of times these exercises are really hard to do on your own, even like physical therapy exercises. So many of my clients are in PT and they're like, I just can't, I'm too lazy. I can't do these exercises. I'm like, no, you can't do these exercises because your body doesn't feel safe when you're alone. You don't know if you're doing it right. You need somebody by your side. It's like animals out in the wild pack animals don't eat alone. They have someone watching out while the rest of the pack is eating because like you said, in order to rest and digest, we have to feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it's such a nuanced conversation, which is why I have this podcast, because a lot of these conversations are really nuanced. Nothing is black or white. Nothing works or doesn't work. It just depends on one, who you are, but also your resources in your external environment, as well as where you're at in your journey. Like at the start of my journey, I mean, I chiropractic was like the start of my kind of holistic journey, finding a chiropractor. And I mean, my chiropractor couldn't even touch my wrist. Like I had so much pain, just like, just lightly touching. It felt excruciating. And I'm incredibly lucky that she stuck with me and worked with me and like never shamed me, because if she had told me, okay, well, go home and do this so that then I could help you better or whatever, like I would have felt so unsafe and I never would have gotten better. We heal when we feel safe, right? And then you're using the word heal. You and I both experience symptoms. It's not about like your symptoms going away. It's just, and this is where the conversation gets tricky too. Like it's more about, can your symptoms take such a backseat that you can live the life you want to live? That you're not, like, for example, I currently have an MCAS like flare up. I have welts all over my body and I can feel it right now. I can feel it literally last night I was up in the middle of the night, itching all night. I woke up this morning feeling it, like it's there in the back of my head, but because of all of the tools that I have through all of the work that I do, I saw my clients today and it wasn't from like a pushing through, like ignore. It was like okay, I'm doing these other things to support myself. I'm taking the Allegra. I am drinking a ton of water. I'm doing these small, tiny supportive practices that allow me to take care of the rest of my nervous system so that it can then support whatever it needs to do with the MCAS stuff.
Yeah. So true. It's so true. Yeah. And, yeah, I believe I'm also in a flare up. So cute. But I do believe I am healing through this. And I mean that in the sense of I'm using all the tools, all the resources, and I'm constantly learning and unlearning about what works and what doesn't work. And also surrendering to the fact that maybe something that did work for me before isn't working for me now. And that's okay. There's so much, we talk about this, but there's so much grief in chronic illness. And I don't know about you, but like I even myself go through, times where there is acceptance, but there's also times where I'm angry. And, I was telling you earlier, like I haven't been able to do anything social really in the past however long because I've had to rest and I haven't been feeling well. And I just go through all the stages of grief constantly. And, we're doing our best to figure it out. And I think that is the definition of healing is.
Yeah. It's not about figuring out how to never feel the grief again. It's, figuring out how to support yourself through grief.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you have to say no to it, like socializing, hanging out, and other times you say yes to it and then you take the hit because you needed that social, like emotional relief. I know I've had to make, and so, a lot of decision fatigue goes, we can get decision fatigued because it's like, well, if I make this decision, here's the consequences. If I make that decision, here's the consequences. But I think that just illuminates the fact that no matter what you do, there's gonna be consequences. So do what is going to at least bring you some level of joy or, you know, positivity to your life.
Oh, I cannot agree with that more. That is so, so, so true. There's going to be consequences no matter what. And I don't know about you. I've had times where, I've actually quote unquote, like forced myself to be social, like even though I was really exhausted and fatigued. And I ended up gaining some energy from it, even though I am an introvert by definition. I still so there was, it was worth it. And there's been other
Right.
times where I'm like, oh gosh, I crossed the line, of what I had capacity for. But in essence, I got to do what you just said, something that filled my heart with joy and was exciting and fun.
Yeah. And if your goal is to always eliminate pain as much as possible, then you make these decisions that don't bring any additional joy to your life. Again, like you're going to feel the pain regardless. So we want to feel it. We want to allow it and accept it in if it's going to bring something good on the other end.
100%. 100%. Yes, 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 yes. I always say, I'm like, joy is the opposite of dis-ease. So how can we grab on to that as much as possible? And I don't know about you, but I'm still learning that myself every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause there's so many things that are within, but then without of your control, you know? If you don't live near your friends and it takes an hour to get to each of them, that's my case. Like when I'm feeling really lonely and I want to see my friends, it's a whole day. Like it's a whole day of planning. It's not just walking next door. Like when we were kids and we just walked next door to our friend's house. It's so different now. So sometimes you make a decision that's drastically life changing. Like 10 of my, 10 of my friends live in a different state. Like maybe I decide to move back to that state. Or if that's not the case, like there's always a decision to be made. I think that's kind of the main point here. And it doesn't mean that the decision is going to make your life perfect on the other end. You might move to this other state and be totally fulfilled by your friendships, but make half the salary and you decide to give up, the expensive things in your life. But like if you're 10 times happier, like make that
Yeah,
decision, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that so much. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's complicated, but that's what therapy is about. Is like it's making these decisions. Helping people make these decisions. And it's not because we know what's best for you. It's because again, we heal in community. So if your therapist is a part of your community and you trust them, you're going to be able to make better decisions just as a result of having someone in your corner who is there just for you. Like your therapist is always going to be biased for you. That's their job. Like, and
Mhm.
if you don't feel that that's the case, then get a new therapist.
Like I would swipe left on that therapist. And you have every right to shop around. I'm going to say this PSA. You have every right
Yeah.
to shop around for a therapist. You have every right to switch therapists until you find one that you feel safe with. Because it's back to that idea component of we heal when we feel safe. And I especially want you to feel safe with whoever you're working with. And when it comes to my clients working with me and making decisions, I always say goal is that you are making decisions from security, not from fear. Not from fear. Like, where is your nervous system when you're making this decision? And also, when you're making decisions, I always ask, does this feel regulating to your nervous system or dysregulating? And often that is enough for people to say, you know what, I want this job or I want to go here. I want to hang out with this person. I actually want to stay home. That feels more regulating, where, we're not, but also not in the sense of, I want to stay home. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave my room because I'm too scared. Cause that's fear based. We
Right.
want to operate from a place again that feels regulating we like to challenge ourselves, but not in a way that will be so dysregulating that it keeps us in fight or flight. So that's what we work with
Yeah.
therapists for, right? To figure that out, to work together, to co-regulate and figure these things out, rather.
Exactly. Yeah. The co-regulation. Like if you are working with me and you're freaking out over a flare up, rightfully so. Like you're really, really scared. You are just kind of in full panic mode. To be able to work with someone you trust and to see them remain calm and to remain calm but still connected to you, it's like it automatically starts to calm your own nervous system. And then you kind of can do some of these things to continue calming yourself down and getting to a place where you can think straight to then make like the next best decision for yourself. But it's interesting you mentioned like sports psychology earlier. I forgot exactly what you said, but
Oh, yes,
visualization. We're
Olympians,
talking about visualization.
visualizations. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting because so like I didn't grow up playing sports. I don't watch any sports teams, much to my husband's dismay, but I am not a sports person. And so but in undergrad, I took a sports psychology class, and I remember I think it was like the only elective I could take that semester. And I was so like, I want to take this. I hate, but this is where I learned of like about visualization and athletes using visualization. And it's like, this is like really studied stuff. We've known about this for a long time, but for some reason it's like in its own little pocket corner with athletes. And then a little now it's like more and more coming into like kind of the mindfulness world. But I think there's been a lot of toxic positivity around visualization and kind of just visualizing the life you want to live. And like
Yeah.
you just visualize it and you don't ever think about the negative, then you're going to attract the positive. And it's like, well, actually, no, you have to work through the shadows
Yeah.
of the things that you don't like. And in fact, thinking about it and learning to regulate your nervous system through it is a really good way to invite more positivity into your life. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's kind of the, even like I was listening to Andrew Huberman's podcast on mental training, and he didn't mention like sports psychology or athletes, but everything he was talking about was like stuff I learned in that undergrad class in sports psychology. And there's new research out now too about like the proper way to do mental training and whatnot. And again, like I just think no one's really talking about it in terms of people with chronic illnesses, except for those who are kind of doing like neural training programs. And again, they're kind of in these like little pockets that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about. And they're kind of like done in these courses. And it's like you have to be in this like niche community to know about
It's
this stuff.
it's true. It's true. And I don't think neural retraining is just one, for at least for me, is just one tool, right? And what it provides you with is tools. It's mostly the visualization. I like that it gives you something to work towards. There's other, I won't I won't publicly comment on DNRS. It wasn't fully in alignment with me. But there are, I just think that it does get that's okay. I can barely
That's
say
my
that.
only,
I could
yeah,
barely say
DNRS
that. I could
is
barely.
my only like
Yeah,
exposure.
I just don't think that it's really addressing that, you know, we do need to acknowledge what we are going through and how much this sucks and how hard it is and how challenging it is. And like you said, there's a lot of shadow work before we can just jump to, light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. My goal with clients is like, because I can't jump into trauma informed therapy right away. I need you to feel safe with me. I need you to start feeling safe in your body. My goal is that you return back to your body. That's what healing to me is too. It's like it's returning back to yourself, because with chronic illness, oftentimes we really disassociate ourselves from our bodies because it's scary. It's so scary. Our bodies do scary things, and we don't know, like, is this enough to go to the ER right now? Is this something I just need to chill out on? Is this in my head? I mean, so much goes through our head when we're experiencing symptoms, but that can be very disembodying is basically what I'm trying to say. Chronic illness in itself, experiencing it can be. And so feeling safe enough to work with your therapist to start working on somatic friendly, trauma informed friendly things like constructed awareness. And thank you for introducing me to it. All hail to Tyler Orr for creating it, which is it is just such an awesome modality, because what I've found is that it does, with my clients specifically, it has allowed them to inch closer and closer to their bodies, to understand their bodies, when they're experiencing symptoms, to really get curious about it rather than going into that fear response. What's the opposite of fear? Curiosity. So going to this curious mindset rather than fear mindset. They can then make better informed decisions for themselves when they are experiencing something scary. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for those who don't know, constructed awareness is just kind of a training program for therapists who it's kind of a mix between like EMDR, somatic experiencing, cognitive work. It's a really good kind of spin-off of all of those things. And it really was what kept me on track with somatic experiencing. Cause after year one, I was like, "Okay, like this is not for me. I can't do this." And then I took Tyler's constructed awareness, and it just the way he explained everything made sense in my brain. Like I was able to intellectually understand it. And I think somatic experiencing like likes to leave out a lot of the intellectualism, but in this country, like everything we know and believe, like it all comes from like a cognitive intellectual place. So kind of have to start there, sometimes with your brain and then move into the body. So anyway, for therapists who are interested, I'll put my referral link down below for Tyler's training. But it was really, really helpful. And it got me back on track with somatic experiencing, which for me, that's what I want. I do want to finish the 3 years in that. And sometimes it's okay to like stop trainings and decide to like go a different route. But I realized like through my pause, the year that I paused and taking, I'm like, okay, I do actually really want to do somatic experiencing. I just needed a little bit extra help to like understand the information.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even constructed awareness even helped me with EMDR too in some ways, in some capacity. Yeah, I really like it. I think it's much gentler than EMDR. Like I know when I first myself as a client did EMDR, I was so not ready. I was so not ready to go there. My nervous system was not there. And the therapist just was like, okay, second session, let's go. And that's when I learned on a personal level that I would never do that on a professional level because you're coming to me with chronic illness. You are likely in a stress response. You are likely dysregulated to some degrees. Like, so we need to do things that feel gentle and nourishing and calming to your nervous system so that when we do start to go there into your past to something that is a bit more dysregulating, you have the capacity to do that. And trust me with being present and guiding you and just being there for you. And trust that if I see something that it's too much, or if you do, that we can communicate. We feel safe to dialogue and communicate. And that is the therapeutic relationship in essence. Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's why like all the research always points back to the modalities don't really matter as long as you have a trusting relationship with your therapist. But then there's different things that build trust in different nervous systems.
yeah.
So that's why you might not click with a certain therapist. It's not because you're doing anything wrong, and it might not even be because they're doing anything wrong. It's just that the two of you together, like they might not quite understand your particular nervous system. And if they do understand it, they still might not be able to go into it the right way because their nervous system is so completely opposite. So again, a lot of this stuff is kind of like intuitive. There's no checklist that I can give you to say like, here's how to know if this particular therapist is exactly right for you. Other than like, we could make a checklist that sounded something like, do you feel safe in their
We feel
presence?
safe.
Do you feel like, yeah, do you feel like they're listening to you? Do you feel confused when you leave session, or do you feel like they've at least given you enough clarity to work with? Um, because like the thing is like in therapy, like hard feelings come up, anger comes up, frustration comes up, fear comes up, and your therapist is supposed to be able to hold a space in a way that you can feel those things without feeling like you're completely unraveling.
Mhm.
And if they're not able to do that, it's because it's just probably a mismatch. So it's likely a good time to find another therapist.
Yeah, yeah. And I take it upon myself too to see, hey, am am I the best person at this time for this client? And I've had to have that difficult conversation before where I'm like, you know, I don't think that this is completely like, because this is for you, right? You, the client, not for me. Like, I want this to be beneficial for you. That's why you're here. So I've had to have those difficult conversations because ethically, I know in my heart that this is supposed to be beneficial for you. And if I'm not entirely seeing that, you know, maybe we're just not completely compatible, I'll be the first to be like, hey, these are people who you may want to check out and who might be. Um, and feeling safe enough to have that conversation with your therapist and know that they're not, you know, they're not going to get offended because this again is for you. I cannot say that enough. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot, you know, I mean, there's not a ton of chronic illness informed therapists, but thanks to you, you're creating this community. Seriously, thank you. Where, you know, there's more of us now that we know of that we can refer out to because that is something that happens too, right? When we go find a practitioner, and this has happened for myself, be it a therapist or some kind of specialized doctor where we're like, okay, they understand this diagnosis. So even though I'm not feeling it with them, they're like they're gaslighting me or they're not that cool or just something's off. I feel like I have to stay with them because they get this diagnosis. They understand that. And that sucks. That's not fair. So, you know,
'Cause they might understand the diagnosis textbook knowledge
yeah.
or the way that it presents in a certain subset of people, but they might not understand the way it's presenting in you. Going back to kind of MCAS, like there's so many different ways that it presents. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, there's so many different ways. Even though there's 13 types, there's still within those 13 types so many different ways that you can present. And so it's that's why this work does sometimes kind of feel a bit spiritual because there isn't like this clear cut blueprint or not everything is evidence based because we just don't have the research, the ability to even research a lot of the things that we're
Yeah.
talking about. Like we don't have the tools to put in
Yeah.
a lab and say, let's measure this. There is no measurement.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's like, yeah, MCAS, dysautonomia, um, EDS, Ehlers-Danlos. These are all things that we're still learning so much about every single day that are very complex and different for each person. I have all, you know, all those diagnoses and I can be sitting next to someone who presents totally different than I do with symptoms, you know, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's,
And yeah, I think like to that point, we are all often looking for people who we can connect with, who can validate our experiences. And part of why I love doing group work so much is because, and I don't specify like one illness for my group. It's because we all have so many of the same experiences despite the diagnosis. And we can find more similarities with each other than differences, I think.
Mhm.
I think even with like people without physical health issues, but maybe who are just experiencing anxiety or depression, we can still find similar experiences with like fatigue, burnout, you know, all of those kind of things that happen when you feel depressed.
Mhm.
Connecting with people and just trying to learn about them from a place of curiosity rather than a place of like, are you the same as me or are you different? That curiosity piece is going to bring you a lot closer and it's going to help you understand your own body a lot better too.
Yeah.
So just want to kind of put that caveat in there.
Yeah, curiosity is a beautiful tool. I never regret utilizing it in any capacity, in any capacity. It's just even if there's someone I disagree with, right? It's bringing curiosity. It's like, okay, what am I feeling? Why is this bothering me? You know, what can I learn from this person and this experience? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. What else comes to mind? I'm trying to think if there's anything around MCAS. I mean, we didn't really go. We kind of talked a little bit in the beginning, but I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that I want to add there. Probably just like fear. We were talking a little bit about this offline before we hit record. Um, Fear. So when you have any kind of histamine response, you can think of the body like an empty bucket. And there are certain things that fill up this bucket. And then once the bucket overflows, you have symptoms. And this is actually true with all chronic illnesses, which is why you'll hear someone say, like, CBD cured me. And other people are like, I didn't feel a single thing from that. This is just a gimmicky marketing thing. But
Snake oil.
In snake oil. Your body is a bucket. And this is coming from the mastcellactivation.org website. And the things that fill up this bucket are diet, stress, smells, weather, activities, hormones, and environment. Environment can include everything like noise, light pollution, dirt pollution, like everything. So these things, we all experience these things, and we're all not experience, but we're all subject to our environment and the things around us. But why does one person get an MCAS flare up or Crohn's disease or EDS and part of that is genetics. The other part is, well, a lot of it is like genetics will determine how much you can handle and what you can handle. Like, why can somebody handle like perfumes and I can't? Again, genetics. But it's understanding that if you have a sensitivity to perfumes, but everything else in your bucket you've kind of taken care of, which by the way is very difficult because we don't know what fills our bucket up. It's a lot of trial and error. Then you might realize, like, let's say your bucket's completely empty except for perfumes. Well, you might be able to handle perfumes now because your bucket is so empty. But if your bucket is half full and you're really sensitive to smells and perfumes, then your bucket might fill up immediately. So that's why, it can feel so, you'll hear people swear that things work for them, and they probably did work for that person because of their particular bucket and what their particular body looks like. Of course, there's a lot of like people who are just trying to profit and sell these things, and marketing can make it sound like it has a cure to every issue. There is no, if there was a cure, I know there's a lot of conspiracy around this, but like if there was a cure, I promise you, yes, the insurance companies want to keep making money, but so do like big companies in America. So if there was a cure, they would be selling it. I promise you. So there is no like, take this pill or take this shot and now you're cured. But when you understand your bucket, you can really greatly reduce the level, the severity, and the the extent of the distress in your life because of these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
It's all trial and error, which is hard, and which is also why therapy or having somebody to walk by your side in your family or in your life who can stick with you no matter how hard it gets and not be like, well, you should be over this by now, or I can't believe this is still happening. It's like, no, we don't need any of that. This is still happening, and like it will continue to happen. And I need social support through this. So
Yep. And every day and every hour is going to look different. And just because I had energy and was able to go out yesterday doesn't mean that's what it's going to look like today. That just means I had energy yesterday. Like, that's not a reflection of what the rest of my days will look like. You don't know how many times I've had people say like, oh, well, I heard you went to this event, so you must be feeling better. I'm like, I was feeling good that day, but no.
yeah,
This is where I am.
cured.
I'm not cured. And like, for a lot of these things we're discussing, MCAS and dysautonomia, as far as I know, there is no quote unquote cure. You can put it, the argument is you can put it in remission and have little to no symptoms. But what is remission? It means things can flare up again.
Right.
So it's for those of us healing from these things, these diagnoses, these symptoms, it's, we do know our bodies best, and it's going to look different every single day. It is. It just is.
Exactly. Yeah. And one more point on like knowing your body. Again, this is just because this is the work that we do. Like, when you have all these mixed messages in your head, you need someone to help you sift through and learn what your intuition is trying to tell you. Because fear can take over, and fear can tell you, stay away from everybody and everything and lay in bed for 10 days straight, right? Like, if that's what your intuition is telling you, then work with a therapist who can help you just untangle and really get a sense of like, what does intuition actually look like and sound like and feel like? So yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Is my intuition fear-based or is it based in curiosity? And that's what you would figure out with a therapist, because even when I say, yeah, you know your body best, it's like, do I? Because oh, these things are happening and it's really scary. And am I making the quote unquote right decision right now? I don't know. I don't ever know. That's when you'd work with a therapist to help understand that better, to bring curiosity to the forefront, to get you back into your body and
And
to
rest and
feel,
digest.
yeah, rest and digest, rest and repair, and help you feel, safe, or at least guide you to feeling safer.
Definitely. Yeah. Is there any other topic or any other thought that you had that you want to share?
Um, I would say to like back to, I'm always going to say like journaling is important, like to just journal sort of, we're talking about the histamine bucket, right? And when you were talking, I'm like, what else can be helpful for that? At least for me, it was journaling. It was writing down what I ate, what I experienced, where I was, who I was with, what I drank, like all of these things to start connecting dots in my health, because um yeah, often, right, these things are happening between appointments with our practitioners, and they're not going to figure it out completely for us. They can give us allergy tests and they can give us food sensitivity tests, but it's something we often find out on our own. And so that's a great way to figure out what is filling up your histamine bucket and what is actually emptying it out a little bit, at least for me and some of my
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was also thinking like, for me, I think journaling had to be unconnected dots that were not necessarily true. Like that my fear brain took
Oh,
over,
yes.
right? And so journaling, and you have a journal. Tell us about your journal, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, so I created a journal when I was couchbound because I couldn't figure out what was going on and doctors weren't really figuring it out for me. Um, so again, and this isn't me trying to market my journal at all. I'm just saying like journaling in and of itself can be really
Yeah.
helpful if it's in alignment with you. Some people journaling is not, and that's totally fine. But for me, like I found I needed a mind, body, spirit journal, and I couldn't find one. So I ended up creating my own prompts, and within those, like I have the physical, symptoms and body temperature and blood pressure and food and that sort of thing. Where I was in my menstrual cycle, and then there was the mental part. Where was I in my anxiety, in my depression, in my joy, and there's the spirit aspect of some visualizations and gratitude. And so anyway, a lot of research went into every single one of these prompts, because like I said, visualization really gives us those positive neurochemicals. It releases them, serotonin and dopamine, and um also, like, I have one prompt about what you love about your body, which, is big for us because, like I was saying, we can become really disembodied with chronic illness and create this not so great relationship with ourselves because our body has quote unquote like betrayed us, and it's really hard. So rekindling that relationship is important. But anyway, back to the purpose of the journal. It was a way for me, and I love that, unconnecting dots. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. For real, for real, for real. But I was able to see like certain ingredients that were bothering me and certain activities that would give me more energy or would give me less energy that I wasn't honestly aware of, because I never took the time to sit and really just think about it. But yeah, I created the journal for that reason. It just didn't exist, and I needed something like this. And I, whether you get mine or create your own, I'm just going to encourage folks to journal. It's super wonderful. And journaling, they've found actually speeds up the healing process in the physical body. I don't know if you saw, there's research like wound victims, and those who journaled healed faster from their wounds than
So
those who
interesting.
didn't.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. So it's not just beneficial to our mental and psychological health. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm turning it into an app right now. It's going to be available
Oh,
next
good. Yes.
next week. And what's cool about it is you get to actually share like PDFs of how you've been doing with your practitioners. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's gonna be great. Yes,
yeah,
I will put all the information in the. I forgot about that. I remember you were kind of testing that out a while back, so I'm glad to hear that it's finally coming out. And yeah,
yeah,
I'll put all that. Just send me an email with all the correct info, and I'll put
yeah,
the,
yeah,
the sh-
yeah, yeah. We'll see how I mean, I just hope it's helpful. That's why I created it. That's why I created
yeah.
both. So we'll see.
Yeah, and again, like tools, like just like there's all these things that fill up our bucket, there's all these different tools that are gonna help kind of relieve some of that stress on the bucket. It's
Mhm.
not just like it's not a one size
No.
fits all, and it's just not like a one thing that helps you. It's all of these things combined. So yeah.
Definitely not. And just asking yourself always with any tool, with any person, it's like, is this nourishing to my nervous system? Is this making me feel more regulated or dysregulated? Because one thing that works for me or doesn't work for me may be the opposite for you. So we
And
need,
then
yeah.
oh, and then I was just sorry, I jumped the gun there, but you are licensed in California or Oregon and Washington to see clients, right?
Yeah, I am. I am. And I do coach outside of those states. However, I am limited in terms of like what I can do. As a as a coach, we're a bit
Yeah.
limited. I can't use certain modalities and so forth. So I usually
Coaching is more
recommend,
like not trauma based,
yeah,
more like setting goals and,
yes,
education and stuff like that. But if
yes.
you're dealing with like clinical depression, debilitating anxiety, trauma responses like PTSD and flashbacks and insomnia and things of that nature, then your best bet is more of a therapist.
Yeah, what I find with coaching is often they'll have a therapist in their state because I think that's really still very, very important. And then they'll see me for coaching as needed, just to have someone who gets it. Because as we've talked about, that's really important. That's really so many times people come to me and they're like, "Wow, someone who actually understands my diagnosis." Because I
Right.
had one client recently tell me, she's like, "My last therapist would just say, 'I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry,' the whole time." And she's like, "That wasn't helpful. I was actually making it so much worse." And then I don't know about you, but even with me in therapy sessions where like they don't know what I diagnose, they don't know what I'm talking about symptom or diagnosis wise. And it takes a lot of energy that I already don't to explain these.
Right.
So
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
yes. Oh man. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I will put everything in the show notes and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, for sure. This was great. I love that it like started outside of this and turned
Yeah.
into it. Yeah.
Now the conversation
Great.
between two therapists who have and work with chronic illness.
Yeah. 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 Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate you.
Thank you too. Thanks for listening. If you learned something new today, consider writing it down in your phone notes or journal and make that new neural pathway light up. Better yet, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram, email me, or leave a voice memo for us to play on the next show. The way you summarize your takeaways can be the perfect little soundbite that someone else might need. And lastly, leaving a review really helps others find this podcast, so please do if you found this episode helpful. And P.S., clicking subscribe ensures you'll be here for the next episode. See you then.